Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm gonna talk about England invasion. So here I'm gonna write the name of the country who made or who expressed all the English in the whole world. England. Why is England important for the English community in the whole world? Because England invited a lot of countries in the whole world. As a result, these ones now they speak English. For example, I'm gonna give you some examples of the main principal countries about England invited. First of all, we have the United States. The United States was invited by England in 1666. Canada. Canada was invaded by England in 1931, and Australia was invaded by England in 1942. I'm gonna give you some examples from all the continents on the whole world. As you can figure out, here I give you some example of the American continent. Here I give you an example of the Australia continent. Then I'm gonna give you an example about the African continent. Here, as you can see, Niger was invaded by England in 9,916, and Israel, the Asian continent, was invaded by England in 9,548. As you can figure out, all these countries were invaded by England. As a result, they now speak English. United States speaks English because it was invaded by England. Canada speaks English because it was invaded by England. Australia was invaded by England because they have a lot of people and they invaded these countries. Niger was invaded by England. As a result, they speak English. And Israel, well, Israel has the language, the official language, the Hebrew, but they know how to speak English too. As you can figure out, the Israel president knows how to speak English because almost all the Israelis know how to speak English because they were invited by England. So I'm gonna put you an image in this video about all the countries that were invited by England. So I'm gonna erase this. I'm gonna erase this. I'm gonna erase this powerful name, England or United Kingdom, by the English syllables, UK, but it means United Kingdom. Okay. Here we have some Roman numbers. The date 16 and the date 19. Throughout the history, England invited all these countries. Not only this, these countries that I'm gonna put you in the image. Throughout the history, England invited these countries. As a result, English has become in the Franca language of the whole world. You know, for example, a lot of people think that the English is the official language in the whole world because nowadays United States is the powerful country in the whole day. But no, it's because England invited a lot of countries. Many countries were invited by England, and hence they speak English. And for that, they speak English in business situation. Even in Japan, we had a conference. Some English came to Mexico, and they say that even in Japan, they always know how to speak Japanese. They speak English in business. Japanese to Japanese, they speak English, not Japanese. So they invited all of this throughout 16 and 19. Okay, how could England achieve this? Because England was very intelligent. Well, he strengthened his navy with weapons, with many people, with swords, like this. They could invite all these countries. When they arrived here to the United States, the real Americans in the United States, they weren't blonde, they weren't tall like we can see them nowadays. They were like us. Called they were called Indios or Apaches, and the Americans had to fight with these Apaches. The Apaches had swords, but the English had weapons, rifles. Francotirador or something like this. Obviously, the Apaches and Indios weren't gonna win against these invaders. Obviously, it was impossible. So the real Americans in 1666, 76, the real Americans were like us, like los Aztecas. They were small, they weren't tall, because you can figure out that nowadays in the United States, the men tend to be tall, but no, this is because it was there was a mix because the Englands are very tall, and for that Americans nowadays they are very tall, but they weren't like this before. They were small. They were niggas like us. But in Canada, Canada was invaded in 1931, and it happened the same. They weren't tall. They weren't big or strong. They were small like us, like Apaches and Indios, like the American were, uh, and they have to fall with them. And how could they achieve this? I did a while ago. I said it a while ago. They have many tripulation. They have a complete crew with weapons, with swords, and with many stuff more. So they invited all the countries. If you can see, I'm gonna erase here. I'm gonna make a little map of the whole world. I'm gonna signal the principal countries that were invited by England. Here we have the American continent. Here is our beautiful Mexico. I'm gonna erase this too because it doesn't let me write. Okay, okay. Here we have United States, but up or above we have Canada. What language do they speak? Both of them speak English. Here I'm gonna write English, English. Well, in Canada they speak French too, but that's another history. Both of them speak English, and why? Why do they speak English? Because they were invited by England. England, and when before the England arrived to United States, they have different types of coins. For example, they could have a coin for I don't know, for Carolina del Norte. They could have a specific coin, but they could have another coin. For example, for Denver, Colorado, they could have another coin. For example, this coin didn't work here, and this coin didn't work here. So when England arrived to the United States, the dollar became in the official money of the United States, and the economy grew up. You know what I'm saying? So because they started to grow by themselves and whatever. What happened with the African country? Oh, country. Sorry, I'm not very good drawing. I'm gonna put the example of Niger. Here's Niger. What language do they speak in Niger? They speak English because they were invited by England too. they speak English, and it's amazing to think that how they achieved all of this only by boards floating in the sea. It's very amazing because we watched a video on YouTube that say all of this. They achieved all of this because they strengthened their navy. They strengthened their navy. Obviously, they had swords, but they have weapons with bullets. Oh, obviously, they don't have rival who face them. So, what happened with the Australian continent? Sorry, what happened with the Australian continent? I don't know how it, but it's a kind of circle here. All the Australian continent speak English. All of them speak English because they were invited by England too. So what happened with Asia? What happened with Asia? Well, here is Russian, but they don't speak English. They speak Russian. But Israel, Birmania, India, also India, the official language of India is Hindi, but they also know how to speak English because they were English colony too. In some part of India, they speak English. But why? We return to the first question: why? Because they were invited by England. So the the million question is why the whole world or why all the world business is in English? Because England did this. Because England is the country which has invited more countries in the whole world. Any other country invited as much as English did it. So, hence, English is the franca language of the whole world because England invited all the continents in the whole world. They invited America, they invited Asia, they invited Africa, they invited Australia. Hence, they speak English. For example, if you don't know how to speak Chinese, if you go to China, but they know how to speak English, because English is dispersed for the whole world. Because thanks to England, obviously, uh, England has the British accent. In the United States, they have another accent, but it doesn't matter. They speak English too. All the countries have a different accent, but they continue speaking English. Why? Because they were invited by England. So the million question is, what can we do to change this? Nothing. The main language in the whole world is English. Why? Because English did like this. If you go to our beautiful and lovely Mexico, here we don't know how to speak English, but in the main zones of the country, for example, La Zona Rosa, Polanco, Chapultepec, there are a lot of people who knows how to speak English because they're prepared people. They studied in the best of universities of the country, in this case of Mexico. But here in Mexico, there are a lot of people who knows how to speak English too. Even in IT, I have an ITian friend who knows how to speak English because in the college he learned how to speak English. So English is despised by the whole world. So here you can see how English invited the whole world. I'm gonna erase all of this. Let me erase it because it doesn't let me write anymore. Here is our beautiful world. Here we have the American continent. the African continent, the European continent. Remember that England is in Europe. Here we have England. This little point that you can see here, that is one of the smallest countries in the whole world, invited all the world with his language. The Asian continent and the Australian continent. All of this, I'm gonna write all of this, all of this, well, almost all of this were invited by England. So in all the country, there is in all the continent, there is a country which speak English because it was invited by England. So right now, if you're not do some business with a foreigner, you have to do it in English because the English is the powerful language in the whole world. So where is the conclusion here? The conclusion here is that you must learn English because if you don't learn how to speak English, you're lost. You know what I'm saying? You're lost. You must learn how to speak English because if you're gonna go to another country, you're gonna make new friends or whatever, you gotta know how to speak English. If you gotta go to France, you gotta know how to speak English because if you don't know how to speak French, you gotta know how to speak English. You know what I'm saying? So, what is the conclusion again? You must know. You don't have to know. You must know how to speak English. Because if you know how to speak English, you're lost. You're gonna make less money. But if you know how to speak English, you're gonna make more money. You're gonna make new friends of the whole world. I've made new friends of the whole world by internet. So the conclusion here is that you must know how to speak English because we can't do anything to change it. English is the Franco language of the whole world. As I said before, throughout the years, throughout the cycles or whatever, in the cycle 19 and 17, England invited all these countries. United States, the main is the United States because we all talk about United States, Canada, Israel, India was invited by England too. Some countries of Africa like Niger, Sierra Leone, all the continent of Australia, and yeah, Canada too. So in every continent there's a country which speaks English. So you must speak English if you really get a good life. If you really wanna make good money, if you're gonna stay your economy, your family economy, if you wanna your family economy is good, you must learn how to speak English because if you know how to speak English, they're gonna pay you more, you're gonna make more money, you're gonna make new friends. So hence English is the Franco language of the whole world because of England, because England invited all these countries. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I explained it well. So I'm Jonathan Rodriguez. I'm studying modern languages at UAM Texcoco. So thank you for watching and I see you to the next.